What happens when a Hollywood legend walks into the lion's den thinking she owns the place, only to discover that some lions bite back harder than expected. Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history, where Jane Fonda's arrogance finally met its match in the most unexpected way. If you think you've seen celebrity meltdowns before, trust me, you haven't seen anything like this. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's so-called royalty. The morning started like any other at the View studio. The familiar buzz of production assistants scurrying around, the makeup artists applying final touches, and the host reviewing their notes one last time. But there was something different in the air that day, an electric tension that seemed to pulse through the building. Jane Fonda had arrived an hour early, which was unusual for someone of her stature. She swept through the corridors like she owned the place, her entourage trailing behind her like devoted servants. "I want to make sure everything is perfect," Jane announced to no one in particular. As she inspected the set, her voice carried that unmistakable tone of authority that had been honed through decades of commanding film sets and political rallies. She adjusted the flowers on the table, moved a chair slightly to the left, and even had the audacity to suggest changes to the lighting setup. The production team exchanged glances, but complied with her requests. After all, she was Jane Fonda, the two-time Academy Award winner, the fitness guru, the political activist who had never been afraid to speak her mind. Her reputation preceded her wherever she went, and today was no exception. Whoopi Goldberg arrived shortly after, coffee in hand, and her usual calm demeanor intact. She had been hosting The View long enough to know that every guest brought their own energy, their own demands, their own drama. But when she saw the changes that had been made to the set, her eyebrows raised slightly. "Someone's been busy," Whoopi muttered to Joy Behar, who had just walked in and was taking in the scene with obvious amusement. "Oh, honey, you have no idea," Joy replied with a knowing smirk. "She's been here for an hour already, reorganizing everything like she's directing a movie." The other hosts filed in one by one, each noticing the subtle but unmistakable Jane Fonda touch that had been applied to their familiar workspace. Sarah Haynes looked confused, Alyssa Farah Griffin seemed impressed, and Sunny Hostin just shook her head with a slight smile. As they took their positions for the pre-show briefing, Jane positioned herself at the head of the table despite being the guest. It was a power move that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. "I thought we could discuss my new project first," Jane began, not waiting for anyone to ask her opinion. "Then perhaps touch on some of the important political issues of the day. I have some very strong thoughts about the current administration that I think your viewers need to hear." Whoopi looked up from her notes, her expression unreadable. "Well, Jane, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we usually let our producers handle the show flow. We've got a pretty good system worked out after all these years." There was a slight edge to Whoopi's voice, barely perceptible, but definitely there. Jane either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. Of course. Jane waved dismissively. "I just thought given my experience in television and film, I might be able to offer some insights. I've been doing this since before some of your team was even born." The room fell silent for a moment. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a storm, when the air pressure drops and everyone instinctively knows something big is about to happen. Whoopi set down her coffee cup with deliberate care and looked directly at Jane. "Experience is definitely valuable," Whoopi said slowly, her words measured and precise. "But so is respect for the people who work hard every day to make this show what it is." Jane's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, absolutely. I have nothing but respect for what you all do here. I just think there's always room for improvement, don't you?" The tension in the room was now palpable. The production assistants found reasons to busy themselves with tasks that took them to other parts of the studio. Even the seasoned co-hosts were looking uncomfortable, sensing that they were witnessing the opening moves of what could become an epic confrontation. Joy tried to lighten the mood. "Well, I think we should probably get ready for the show. Our audience is going to be here soon." But Jane wasn't done. She had spent her entire career being the center of attention, the driving force behind every project she touched. The idea that she might need to take a back seat to anyone, even temporarily, seemed foreign to her. "I was actually hoping we could make a small change to the seating arrangement," Jane continued, gesturing toward the famous View table. "I think it would be more visually appealing if I sat in the center, perhaps next to Whoopi. It would create better symmetry for the cameras." And there it was, The moment when Jane Fonda's legendary confidence crossed the line from impressive to insufferable. She wasn't just suggesting changes to the show's format. She was essentially asking to be treated as an equal co-host rather than a guest. The audacity was breathtaking, and everyone in the room knew it. Whoopi stood up slowly, her full height imposing even without any dramatic gestures. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but carried an undertone that made everyone pay attention. "Jane, I think there might be some confusion about how this works." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down at high noon. Whoopi's tone was measured, but anyone who knew her recognized the warning signs. Jane, however, seemed oblivious to the shift in the room's energy. Confusion. Jane laughed, a sound that came out more shrill than she intended. "I think I understand television quite well, Whoopi. I've been doing this since you were probably still figuring out what you wanted to be when you grew up." The collective intake of breath from everyone present was audible. Jane had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She had made it personal, and worse, she had made it about age and experience in a way that was both condescending and completely tone-deaf. Whoopi's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that right? Well, let me help clear up any confusion you might have about how things work here. This is The View, not the Jane Fonda Show. You're a guest, which means you sit where we tell you to sit, you talk when we ask you to talk, and you definitely don't come into our house and start rearranging the furniture." "Now, wait just a minute." Jane stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with an unpleasant screech. "I don't think you understand who you're talking to. I've won 2 Academy Awards. I've been a cultural icon for 5 decades, and I've used my platform to fight for causes that actually matter. I'm not some reality TV star looking for 15 minutes of fame." The room was dead silent now, except for the distant hum of studio equipment. Even the camera operators, who had been preparing for the show, had stopped what they were doing to watch this unexpected drama unfold. Joy Behar looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair, while Sarah Haynes was practically frozen in place. Whoopi took a step closer to Jane, her voice remaining calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "And I've won an Academy Award, an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony. I'm one of the few people on this planet who can claim that. But you know what? None of that gives me the right to walk into someone else's workplace and act like I own it." Jane's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in front of an audience. Her entire career had been built on being the most important person in any room she entered. The idea that someone would not only refuse to defer to her, but actually push back was clearly foreign to her. "This is ridiculous," Jane sputtered. "I came here as a favor to your show. Do you have any idea how many interview requests I turn down every week? I chose to come on The View because I thought you had more class than the other daytime shows." "And we appreciate you choosing us," Whoopi replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But if this is how you treat people when you're doing them favors, I'm starting to understand why you might not be as busy as you think you are." The insult hit its target perfectly. Jane's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She had been prepared for softball questions about her latest project, maybe some gentle political discussion where she could showcase her activism. She had not been prepared for someone to question her relevance in the entertainment industry. "How dare you?" Jane finally managed to say. "I've been fighting for women's rights since before you even knew what feminism was. I've put my career on the line for causes I believe in while other actresses were worried about their nail polish." Whoopi laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Oh, so now you're the only actress who ever stood up for anything? That's interesting, because I seem to remember putting my own career on the line plenty of times. The difference is, I don't walk around expecting a parade every time I do the right thing." Sunny Hostin finally found her voice. "Maybe we should all just take a breath and remember we're about to go live in 20 minutes. But Jane was too far gone now. Her legendary temper, the one that had caused problems on film sets for decades, but had been carefully managed by publicists and handlers, was finally making a public appearance. "Don't you dare lecture me about doing the right thing," Jane snapped at Whoopi. "I was protesting the Vietnam War when it actually mattered. I was standing up to powerful men in Hollywood before Me Too was even a hashtag. And I was using my platform to raise awareness about important issues while you were making jokes in comedy clubs." The attack on Whoopi's comedy background was a mistake, and Jane realized at the moment the words left her mouth. But it was too late to take them back. Whoopi's expression shifted from controlled annoyance to something much more dangerous. "Comedy clubs, huh?" Whoopi's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more threatening than if she had been yelling. Those comedy clubs taught me how to read a room, how to know when I'm not wanted, and how to respect the people who are kind enough to give me a platform. Apparently, they don't teach those skills in acting classes. Jane's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or the realization that she had severely underestimated her opponent. This is completely unprofessional. I expected better from a show of The View's caliber. Professional? Whoopi raised an eyebrow. You want to talk about professional? Professional would have been coming in here, saying hello to everyone, taking the seat we assigned you, and being grateful for the opportunity to promote your project. What you did was walk in here like you own the place and start making demands. That's not professional. That's entitled. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to intervene. I think emotions are running a little high here. Maybe we should focus on getting ready for the show. But Jane whirled on her. Don't you dare try to manage me like I'm some difficult child. I've been handling media appearances since before you were born. And yet somehow you still haven't figured out how to be a gracious guest. Whoopi shot back. That's actually pretty impressive when you think about it. The production assistant who had been hovering near the door finally spoke up. Excuse me, but we really do need to start getting everyone mic'd up for the show. Jane turned toward the assistant with fury in her eyes. We'll start when I say we start. I'm not going on that stage until this situation is resolved to my satisfaction. It was the wrong thing to say to the wrong person at the wrong time. Whoopi had been patient. She had been professional. And she had given Jane multiple opportunities to back down gracefully. But threatening to hold up the show, threatening the jobs and livelihoods of everyone who worked hard to make The View successful, was the final straw. Whoopi's demeanor changed in an instant. The measured patience, the professional courtesy, the attempt at maintaining some semblance of civility, all of it evaporated like morning mist. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who had finally reached their limit. Oh, now I understand, Whoopi said, taking another step toward Jane. You think you can come in here and hold our show hostage until we bow down and kiss your ring? Well, let me tell you something, Jane. This might come as a shock to you, but the world doesn't revolve around your schedule or your satisfaction. Jane's face went pale, then flushed red again. You're being completely unreasonable. All I asked for were some simple accommodations that any professional production would be happy to provide. Simple accommodations? Whoopi's laugh was sharp and cutting. You redesigned our set, tried to rewrite our format, demanded our seating chart, and now you're threatening to sabotage our show. If that's your idea of simple, I'd hate to see what you consider complicated. The other hosts were now completely silent, watching this confrontation unfold like spectators at a car crash. They knew they were witnessing something unprecedented, something that would be talked about for years to come. Jane tried to regain her composure. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply trying to contribute to the success of the show. With my experience, I thought I could help make the interview more engaging for your audience. Your experience? Whoopi's eyes flashed with something that looked dangerously close to contempt. Let me ask you something, Jane. When was the last time you had a #1 movie? When was the last time you were relevant to anyone under the age of 60? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone who used to be important is desperately trying to convince everyone she still matters. The words hit Jane like physical blows. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. That's completely unfair. I've remained active in important causes. I've written books. I've maintained my fitness empire. Active in causes, Whoopi repeated mockingly. Right. Because nothing says authentic activism like a woman who spent the last decade making workout videos for rich housewives. Tell me, when was the last time you actually risked something for your beliefs? When was the last time you put yourself on the line for anyone but yourself? Jane was visibly shaking now. I don't have to justify my life's work to you or anyone else. I've done more for this country and for women everywhere than you could ever dream of accomplishing. Is that what you tell yourself? Whoopi's voice was deadly quiet now. Because from where I sit, it looks like someone who's been living off past glory for so long that she's forgotten how to be humble. You want to talk about what you've done for women? Let me tell you what you've done for the women on this show today. You've insulted us, dismissed us, and treated us like we're your employees instead of your peers. The production assistant cleared his throat nervously. Excuse me, but we really are running out of time before the live broadcast. Jane whirled around to face him. I told you we're not starting until this is resolved. Do you not understand English? That was the moment Whoopi decided she had heard enough. No, Jane. We're starting right now, but you won't be on the show." The silence that followed was deafening. Jane stared at Whoopi in complete shock, as if she couldn't process what she had just heard. "Excuse me." Jane's voice was barely a whisper. "You heard me," Whoopi said firmly. "You're not going on The View today. In fact, you're not going on The View ever. We don't need guests who think they can bully our staff and disrespect our show." Jane's shock quickly turned to fury. "You can't do this to me. Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know what kind of connections I have in this industry?" "I know exactly who you are," Whoopi replied calmly. "You're someone who used to be a big star and now can't handle the fact that other people have opinions and boundaries. As for your connections, feel free to use them. Call anyone you want. Tell them how Whoopi Goldberg had the audacity to expect you to behave like a professional." Jane looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, someone who would stand up for her and tell Whoopi she was being unreasonable. But every face she saw reflected the same message: silent agreement with Whoopi's decision. "This is career suicide for you," Jane threatened, her voice rising to a near shout. "When word gets out about how you treated me, about how unprofessional this entire situation has been, your reputation will be destroyed." Whoopi smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My reputation, Jane, honey, my reputation is built on 30 years of treating people with respect and standing up for what's right. Your reputation, on the other hand, is about to include the story of how you got kicked off The View for acting like a spoiled child." "I am not a spoiled child," Jane screamed, completely losing control now. "I am a legend in this industry. I am an icon. I am Jane Fonda, and I, Whoopi said with devastating calm, "am done with this conversation. Security will show you out." Jane's face went through several different expressions in rapid succession: shock, rage, disbelief, and finally something that looked almost like panic. The realization that she had pushed too far, that her legendary status couldn't protect her from the consequences of her behavior, was written clearly across her features. "You're making a huge mistake," Jane said, her voice now shaky and uncertain. "When this gets out, when people hear about what happened here today, you'll regret this decision." "The only thing I regret," Whoopi replied, "is that it took this long for someone to call you out on your behavior. You've been getting away with treating people like garbage for decades because of your name and your past accomplishments. Well, congratulations, Jane. You finally found someone who doesn't care about any of that." As security approached, Jane made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Wait, please. Maybe we can work this out. Maybe I was a little demanding, but that's just because I care so much about the quality of the show." Whoopi shook her head. "It's too late for that, Jane. You showed us who you really are today, and we believe you." As Jane was escorted from the studio, still protesting and making threats about lawsuits and industry blacklists, Whoopi turned to her co-hosts and the production team. "Well," she said with a slight smile, "I guess we're going to have to fill that segment with something else." The room erupted in nervous laughter and scattered applause. Everyone present knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. The moment when one of Hollywood's most entitled stars finally met someone who wouldn't be intimidated by her reputation. And that's how Jane Fonda's appearance on The View became the most humiliating moment of her career. A brutal reminder that respect is earned, not demanded, and that even legends can fall when they forget how to treat other people with basic human dignity. What do you think about celebrities who believe their fame gives them the right to treat others poorly? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts.